Good morning, councillors, CEO and directors. The traditional custodians of the land on which we're privileged to call home and to meet today, the Yuwi people, represent a human link dating back over 2,000 generations. We pay our respects to the Indigenous elders past and present and recognise their continuing connection to our land and our community. Now, this meeting is being streamed live to the general public. It's being recorded in accordance with Council's standing orders. So welcome to our online viewers and welcome also to the public back into our meetings today for the first time since COVID started. By attending a public meeting, you are consenting to your image and your voice being recorded if you wish to speak. And we're required to tell you that you may be subject to legal action if your actions or comments are deemed inappropriate or unacceptable. Thank you very much. Councillors, I declare the meeting open. There's nobody to lead us in prayer today from the combined churches of Makai, so let us together seek a blessing on this meeting. Lord, help us to be strong, for there is always much to be done. Help us to conduct ourselves in the spirit of truth and compassion. Guide our hearts and minds so that our actions may always be fair and reasonable. Bless our officers and staff. Watch over our community. Amen. Amen. So, councillors, nobody absent on council business. There's no apologies. We have a leave of absence for Councillor Jones to consider, and the request is that Councillor Jones be granted leave of absence for the council meeting on the 25th of November 2020. Somebody like to move? Okay. Councillor Hassan, seconded by Councillor Bell. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Condolences. Councillors, there is a condolence we'd like the council's endorsement of today. Desley Hughes, as a council officer, had 10 years on council. And she joined council as an admin officer in the development assessment program initially and went through to the role of shared services by mid-2015. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a couple of years ago and lost her battle last week. And throughout her illness, I think if anybody knew Des, she was always 100% positive, maintained a great sense of humour and a very good matter-of-fact approach to life. She was a shining example of our staff. A true asset to our organisation and, as I said, always gave 110% of everything she did. Her husband Jim also works for council as a horticultural supervisor. and she and Jim have 3 children, Olivia, Kelsey and Leighton. So, with Council's acceptance, I'd like to offer our condolences as a council to Desley's family. Are there any other condolences? No other condolences? Let's move on. Conflicts of interest. There are some conflicts of interest in an item down on the agenda. We'll deal with that when we get to it. Are there any other conflicts to be declared right now? No other conflicts? Let's move on. The minutes of the meeting of the 23rd of September have been circulated. We've had nothing back. Would somebody like to move that they be adopted? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. There's been no business arising out of those minutes as we've been advised. There's no mirror minutes today. So let's move on to the consideration of committee reports and recommendations. In the officers' reports today, the Office of the Mayor and CEO at 11.1.1, CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The financials we're doing our reforecast and we'll be coming back at a future council meeting. So that's really all I have to say, very short today on the CEO report.
Questions for the CEO and the CEO's report, Councillor Mann?
Your Worship, on page 13, corrective actions that are lagging behind. I'm just wondering when they may be completed, given I think we've been it's been happening for a while, and we've been told for a while that they would be rectified. It's just concerning that there's 44 actions outstanding for 30 to 60 days and 5 for 60 to 360 days.
CEO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll direct that question to Director of Corporate Services. I will make the comment that we are closing out the corrective actions and we've made substantial inroads into some of the overdue corrective action items, but Director of Corporate Services can probably...
Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can honestly say that most of those corrective actions have now been closed. There is only 15 outstanding now, and we're working through those, and we're keeping on top of them. A lot of those actions related to contractors, particularly in our aquatic facilities, but they are now being rectified, and we're working with those contractors to get those safety actions closed in a timely manner.
Thanks, Director.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. A good report from the CEO. A couple of highlights for me is our first or our second Council and Community Day was in the southern area, and we had a good day to be able to get around and meet with a couple of the business owners down there, and also view some of the capital projects that Council's been working on during the start of this financial year and carrying over from last financial year. Another highlight, I think, in the report is the $7.8 million worth of external funding that's come our way through a variety of projects. So that is a really important part of what we do here at Council, to make sure that we are making the most of that external funding and applying for those grants and funding opportunities to support the work that this Council does in the community and the capital programs that we run.
Thank you very much. Councillor May, Speaker against. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow on from Councillor May, I agree the CIC Day last week was a great opportunity to see what's happening in the southern area of our region. In particular, the upgrades to boat ramps and their car parks. I think this just shows an ongoing commitment from this council towards improving boat ramps in our region. And if I also could mention, the CEO also had notes on meetings and briefings, and if I could mention the Integrity Act training that was done for councillors, conducted by Zoom by the Department of Local Government Racing and Multicultural Affairs. This is vital training, and it will assist us to abide by the stringent rules that have come into effect in relation to Belcara. So it was really a pleasure to be part of that. It was a couple of hours, but it was very well spent. So thank you, and I commend the report.
Thanks very much. Councillor Bonaventura. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion then. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. 11.2, Capital Works, the monthly report.
Attendance at the LGAQ.
Attendance at the LGAQ. Did I miss that one? Right. My bad. Attendance at the LGAQ. Okay. So 11.1.2, council attendance at the LGAQ. I mean, that's pretty well straightforward. Are there any questions to that report? No questions. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Hassan moves. Councillor Bonaventura seconds. Councillor Hassan. Okay, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, let's move on to capital works. I think that's right. Okay. And our acting director today, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to just take the opportunity to highlight some of the activities that were completed during the month. Pleased to report that no LTIs were incurred in the month. There were 2 incidents, contract incidents. It's good to see that the contractors are reporting these incidents. We're encouraging them to do that and work with us, letting us know what is happening on the ground. Year-to-date capital spend is 15.7 million. It's approximately 1.6 million below the forecast. This is attributable to varying factors, including some savings, which is good. We've had some contract delays, finalisation of claims have taken some time, and we've had some plant and supply issues that's been impacting delivery timelines. Delivery programs are field services, major projects and contract services are progressing with works, and 10 projects were completed in the month, and 5 contracts were let. Some key achievements from some of the other programs, including the PMO, has been working with the digital media team to develop an online map which identifies locations of the various projects, giving a bit of background information as to what the work is and the timing. The design services team and the survey team continue to progress through their work schedule, and the survey team has been assisting other programs with their survey needs. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Acting Director. And I must say that for the first quarter, given the quarter that it was, to end up at around 91%, and significant savings as well. I mean, I think that's a pretty good outcome. Are there questions? Councillor Mann.
On page 66 of the agenda, Milton Archibald intersection and a single lane roundabout. I'm asking the question, do we think that's the right treatment because it's high volumes of traffic, or would lights be better there?
Okay.
Yep, the analysis has been done. The roundabout is the preferred option. It is going to be 4-way intersection because there is going to be access into the airport at that location. And with the volumes that are predicted, it is the solution, the best solution.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? No further questions? You've got off lightly, haven't you?
Thank you very much.
Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Jones moves. Councillor Englert seconds. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. The boat ramp and car park extensions in the report today, page 61, I'd just like to make a comment. Given that the local demand for boaties in the region, and it's identified by TMR in our region that we should have approximately another 15 boat ramps in Makai, Council has been able to attract part funding under the Building Better Regions Fund with Victor Creek, Campham Beach, Murray Creek, Halliday Bay upgrades to the value of $2.2 million for our recreational fishing and their families, and I think that's a great outcome for our community. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? No other speakers?
No,
Councillor Martin.
Thank you very much, Worship. Yes, look, I just wanted to make comment on the report and the bedding down of this capital works program within council as an organisation. And we see in the report today that they're starting to look at the social media and the interaction of how they can best communicate the capital works program. So I just really wanted to highlight that and say what a great initiative, and continue to develop.
Yeah. Other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Community and Client Services. Monthly report for September. Our Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. During September, the Community and Client Services team have delivered a number of really good outcomes for our community, a few of which I'd like to highlight now. So early on in the month, we had our COVID-19 Recovery Assistance Grant close, And those final few days that were open during September, closed on the 4th, were some of the busiest for our team for this particular grant. Over those 4 days, we paid almost $230,000 out to 54 organisations. Overall, it was just over $900,000 that we've given out now to community groups, 228 different organisations. Also, on the topic of funding, the first funding rounds for this financial year also closed for our community grants and regional arts development fund programs. Combined between the two, 50 applications were received in total, requesting around $600,000 in funding. Now, the community grants recommendations will be presented to Council later this morning, and RADF recommendations will follow at the next meeting. Now, other highlights for the month include the September Weekender program, which was delivered here at the MEC. Now, that saw almost 1,000 patrons attend one of the 3 events across the last weekend of the month. Now, thinking outside the box, the MEC team also trialled a combination of indoor and outdoor seating options for this particular event in order to maximise the audience numbers due to the COVID-impacted period we currently find ourselves in. Our emergency management team also facilitated a training session which was attended by approximately 60 carers and support workers in our area. The purpose of these sessions was to help them develop person-centred emergency plans. Now, these assist vulnerable people in our community to prepare themselves for disaster, which is very timely considering the point of the year we find ourselves in now. Now, the new My Town series, which is a partnership with the Daily Mercury, was also launched in September. Now, this sees a reporter visiting a different community in our region each fortnight to uncover local stories and to promote that community. Each session is also attended by a councillor, and in September the communities of Habana and Northern Beaches were featured. Now, I'd also like to note that we have a couple of new additions in the report this month that I'd like to draw your attention to. So firstly, we've included an update on seasonal pest species, along with any emerging issues relevant to our region. And we've also added a section highlighting the food businesses within the region that have recently achieved an Eat Safe rating of 5 stars. Now, there were 3 businesses that achieved that during September, which is a really impressive milestone, and it's a pleasure to be able to recognise them within our monthly report for their strong and proactive management of food safety within their businesses. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. And can you pass on our congratulations to your team for their handling of the COVID grants?
Absolutely.
Everywhere we have been, we're getting excellent feedback in terms of the turnaround time and the ease with which this program was delivered. So that's all attributable to your staff, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Questions? No questions? Wow. Thanks very much, and congratulations on those new inclusions in the report too, Director. That's fantastic. Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann, Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to start off by highlighting safety performance in the department. Again, minimal incidents. Very disappointing though to see that staff members are being subjected to verbal abuse and physical harm as well. But in all, I thank the department for their focus on workplace health and safety. I would like to echo the Director's comments too about the COVID grant. While there was so many people helped with that COVID grant to a really large amount of money, and we did sometimes get the feedback that some people had missed out. But I've been talking to a few groups who purposely didn't apply because they weren't impacted enough. They felt the money was better spent elsewhere. Even though they couldn't conduct fundraising activities, they still weren't impacted badly enough to want to apply so that in case someone else missed out. The other thing I wanted to talk about was just the breadth of services that the community and client services deliver across many areas, and the passion of the people that work in that department in delivering those services. So I had the pleasure of recently completing an art walk with our arts-based director, Tracy Heathwood, and we had a very pleasant hour around the city streets, and on all the stops, Tracy talked about the artwork, the reason behind it, how long it's been there, different stuff about the artists, and I'm actually proud to be part of a council that's committed to the arts in our region and to supporting artists, because that's what makes us a livable, resilient community. So very pleased with that.
Thanks, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Look, the community programs team, it's a really, really large program that they undertake, and our staff are very, very hands-on. So I just wanted to provide everyone with some touch points that were interesting to me. One was that the Disability Action Week has occurred. The YOL 1000 Youth Project is moving right along. There were Torres Strait Islander and Australian South Sea Islander events, the Are You OK and Safe Talk training, the LGBTI and Pride event. The Sports Expo is certainly moving right along with our planning. And there was certainly an in-kind assistance request totalling $5,120 from our community, which we've been able to pay. In our libraries, Your Worship, and the community programs team, they've really taken on that positive task of COVID, and we've had some amazing results with connections within our community, thanks to their thinking outside of the box ideas to do their programs differently. Within libraries, I'd just like to highlight the Young People Service and the programs associated within. We've had, in the month of September, a total of 9,348 engagements with our staff in one area, and so much, there's so much that the Council offers. I also like to note that our one and only homegrown author of children books like A Cat with No Tail, Kat Illich, has also spent some time with the kids in our library. So that's been a great result, and I'm sure our community have really enjoyed that. Thank you, Your
Thanks,
Worship.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Bella.
I'm very pleased to see that after a request I made last meeting, that the section on where we're standing with feral pests in our region is quite excellent, I believe. And also, thanks very much for the link to the biosecurity plan. I'd encourage everyone at some point to have a look, just so that we know what is where and where we stand with it. Very interesting to see as well that we found it on found pests in a rail corridor, sickle pod, as I've spoken before. And the other day I was, it was pleasing. I came to the gate of my block and ran into a council vehicle coming the other way. Said, "Can I help you?" He said, "Oh no, just doing the roads, looking for rat's tail and things like that." So, you know, our transport corridors are huge vectors for these things such as Parthenium, rat's tail, the whole lot. I think this is excellent, and if there's any way we can get it better, we'll keep going. But thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Councillor Bonaventura.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, I'd like to echo Councillor Bella's remarks in relation to pests. It is probably the second most common call I get in relation to pests on roadsides, so it's good to see that we're attacking that. Just a couple of quick things. Just in relation to the libraries, on the statistics side, it's good to see new library members are rising. The last 3 months have been going up, and they're well above previous years. The other one that's interesting is digital loans are down for the last 3 months, but I sometimes think that means that people are getting out more and possibly, you know, finding other ways to get their information, which is also good. The only disappointing one was that our library visitors are definitely down in comparison to last year. It is rising a bit last month for September, but it's well below our previous 3 years, so I don't know whether there's a reason for that, but that's probably the only disappointing one. The only other thing I'd like to mention, which is probably a little bit disappointing, and that is under our customer requests tracking area. I noticed that the second highest number of complaints or customer requests coming in, behind public health and safety and environment, are dogs and other domestic animals, with 174 for the month. So that's, 30 days, that's almost 6 per day. And I'd like to remind residents that basically it's, your pet, your responsibility. And a little bit of consideration of where your pet is and what it's doing will go a long way. So give us a hand to give everybody else a hand. So with that, I commend the report, Your Worship.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Two things I'd like to highlight, and the first one is our emergency management team and the facilitation of 60 carers and support workers across the area in person-centred emergency plans. So that's a new initiative, and it's a great take-up from the community. So we've got 60 people that are trained in how to develop those plans to help vulnerable people in emergency situations. The other highlight that I'd like to draw out is the training that was conducted down in Serena. I had the privilege of opening and welcoming the 22 participants that took part in that. from a vast number of community-based organisations across the Serena area. And the environmental health team did a fantastic job in delivering that workshop. And it's really great because it's an interactive workshop where we're inside the hall learning the paperwork side of things. And then you step out of the hall and we've set up outside, the MEC chef has set up outside and practically put into place what has just been taught within the room. So a great initiative from the team and very well received by the community.
Thanks, Councillor May. Are there other speakers? Councillor Hassan.
Just wanted to add a couple of things further. The corporate communications and marketing in that report, just regarding bin stickers that have been released by council, they've been designed and implemented by the corporate communications and marketing team. They're to be stuck to the lid of your recycling bins, just to encourage people to make sure that they're putting the right things into those bins, which reduces contamination and also reduces the workload on our staff and contractors at the other end. So those are available free from our customer service centres in Makai, Moreni and Serena. So I just would like to encourage residents to all take up that free offer. Secondly, as Councillor Jones alluded to earlier, our Sports Expo, which is a huge event normally held here at the MEC, unfortunately due to COVID, will look quite different next year. The team is in the process right now of just developing exactly how that's going to work. I think it will actually encourage more sports to be involved. We would be limited here in how many we can have. This will be an online event where every single sport in the entire region can be involved. So I just encourage anyone who's involved with a sporting club or association to keep an eye out for communication from council about how that's going to develop. And finally, there's an event happening this morning down at Blue Water Quay, which unfortunately we weren't able to attend, a Pride March. And 11 a.m. if anyone's available to get down there. And I'd just like to offer our solidarity and support to the LGBTIQ community in Mackay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hassan. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. The 11.3 is the community grants assessment. Now, there's 4 councillors who have a conflict for this particular item. Now, we've dealt with this in different ways before, but under the new tranche of COVID, not COVID, wash my mouth out, under the new tranche of Belcara legislation that started on the 12th of October, we have to treat these things a little differently until we get to the point of actually determining the process going forward. I think it's best now that any councillor who has a conflict with this report, not for the individual items in the report, but with the report, because that's what the new tranche deals with, needs to step out. So if you have a conflict with the report that delivers this money, please step out now. Thank you very much. So we still have a quorum, thank you, which is good. I think this report is pretty well self-explanatory, councillors, and it's fantastic to be able to sit and deal with a report that delivers $187,000 or almost $188,000 into our community. Are there any questions at all from any councillors? No questions? CEO, is there anything you want to add to that? Okay. All right, so would somebody like to move the adoption of the report? Councillor Seymour moves. Councillor Mann seconds. Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Assessment of the local community grants has been finalised. Congratulations to the successful applicants. Applications that weren't successful are encouraged to apply for grants in future. One thing noticeable on the percentage of applications is a minimal amount of information to make a positive assessment. So organisations applying for future grants, the more information entered on the application makes assessment of the grants easier. $565,000 is what Council gives back to community organisations over the financial year. In the first round of 2021, we had 39 applications, of which we have approved $188,000 to give away to 24 organisations. Lucky recipients geographically range from Mackay, Serena, Walkston, up the valley and over to St Helens. Successful organisations range too from sporting clubs, vehicles and fundraising organisations. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Seymour, and well done. You're the only surviving member of that committee to sit around the table. Can we actually say to the committee, well done, job well done, and it's no easy task for all those applications to come down with the final solution, but you've absolutely nailed it this time round. Well done. Are there other speakers? Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Mann, speaking for.
Speaking for, and only to say, it really is a positive outcome, and there's a huge amount of reading to get through that many applications. So I really do commend the committee for the amount of work that goes into assessing the applications and then distributing the funding.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? No other speakers? I put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll ask the other councillors to rejoin the meeting. Thank you, councillors, and the council has adopted unanimously the approved funding under that committee structure. And to the members of the committee who had to step out, thank you very much for a job well done. As we said before, it's no easy task to actually read through all of that and deliver those outstanding results to our community. So thank you very much. All right, 11.4.1 is the independent report on industrial land supply in the Mackay region. We'll get the director to talk to this CEO, is that right? Yes. Okay. Director, would you like to just speak to this report initially, and then we'll ask for any questions?
Yes. So this was an independent report that was carried out, and it was, I think, definitely a worthwhile exercise having it done. What it's done is established a baseline in terms of current use of industrial land and industrial land supply, and it gives us a database, I guess, we can then monitor going forward, and that is a recommendation of the report that we continue to annually monitor industrial land take-up. Overall, the findings of the report is that for all types of industry, we have sufficient land based on what's an expected level of development, industrial development to 2041, and that excludes industrial land take-up in the Port of Mackay and also in the airport, which would further reduce the reliance on the other industrial zoned land. It recommends clustering development and sequencing development to make maximum use of the infrastructure that's already in place. And also trying to really promote economies of scale, so particularly around our existing industrial area at Paget. And it talks about, it gives some indication of when we may need to start planning for new industrial land, and also confirms Rosella as being a suitable location for a future industrial area, given its location and proximity to the existing industrial areas at Bakers Creek and Paget. So overall, I think it's quite a good report.
Thank you very much, Director. Are there questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I've also read the report, and the results in the report seem to be very, very similar to previous reports that I've read in other terms of council, you know, stating that there's sufficient land for quite a period of time. But I'm just wondering what triggered the need to actually do this report, to spend the money, especially as we've been through a downturn, and the need for industrial land has been slow. So on page 135 of the report, I note that the report was commissioned following a notified motion last year, and I'm curious as to the background of former Councillor Cam used as a reason for this report to be undertaken, and at what cost the report was.
Councillor Jones, was a motion of council that was approved. So if you want to know, you go back and read the minutes. We're not here to discuss the motives of this recommendation. We're here to discuss the outcome of a motion of council. And so this is the outcome. The costing was what was the costing? Not sure.
Have to look it up. I think it ended up being approximately $93,000.
Right. Okay. So council approved, and that was the outcome. So there it is.
Thank you, Your
Worship. Are there other
Worship.
questions? Councillor May.
Just a couple of questions, and the officers may not be able to answer them because I'm fully aware that the consultant has done this work, but the industrial land investigation in the Eaton area, when I read through the report and I see that it doesn't really, to me, seem to have been investigated. It seemed to have been really just pushed aside, and the messaging is really around, well, we've got ample land at Paget, why do we... There didn't seem to me to be any looking at alternatives and alternative uses for that particular Eaton area, and I raised that because that was one of the triggers, or the triggers out of the planning scheme consultation, where we had a number of people come and make submissions to us around why has everything got to be Paget based when there's other uses of industrial activity that could be located out of town. So that was my first question in regards to the report, and it just didn't seem to me to be thoroughly investigated.
Director, can you respond to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, Your Worship. The Eaton was looked at as part of the this study, and essentially what the study found was that that area is considered distant to access to resident workforce, road and port infrastructure, and again reinforced the need to try and cluster industrial development to make the best use of existing trunk infrastructure. And essentially it comes back to that not wanting to spread ourselves too thin in terms of servicing our industry area. And I know there was talk about hard stand uses out in that land, and there is also a preliminary approval for a transit centre. But the overall, and it was an independent report, this report, so it wasn't, we didn't have a hand in how it was done or, you know, the outcomes. But the finding was ultimately that that council is better off focusing its efforts on the existing industrial zone land and the Rosella industrial investigation area.
Yep.
I do have one more question.
Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So, in relation to the Serena industrial area and the investigation area, when I read the report and I look at the mapping of all of that, there doesn't, nowhere in the report does it mention the rail activity at Serena, just outside of Serena, as being part of the industrial land investigation. It never even got a mention in the report. And I raise that question because I know that the ripple effect from that rail activity creates the demand for industrial land in Serena. So we see that flow-on businesses take up industrial land, just as that they have at Patch Street and the other smaller industrial areas that we have. And to me, it just does not seem to have been considered at all in the report.
I may have to take part of this question on notice. I'm not completely up to speed with what the report says about the industry investigation area and industry zoned land at Serena. From an officer perspective, that area it's important, and there's work that we will be doing internally to understand what's required to service that land from a council infrastructure perspective. But yeah, in terms of what the report says about it, I'll have to respond at a later stage.
All right. Councillor Bonaventure.
Oh, just one little question. Just in the officer's recommendation, it states that council consider implementation a recommended annual industrial land supply and demand review. So the question is, while I know it's expected to be done by internal and current staff, could I ask if the director believes we have the current spare capacity and current staff, and what expected cost would that be?
Certainly. Director?
Thank you. Yeah, we can do that work internally with our existing resources. As you know, we already have officers within strategic planning who continually review our statistics and community profiles and economic indicators. The work that was done to support the preparation of this report gives us a really good base level data that we can then use to work from. If we didn't have that, there would obviously be a cost involved in pulling that together. But why we're very pleased with the outcome of the report is that it's given us a lot of data that we can then use and build upon, and enables us then to do those annual reviews in-house.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? There's no doubt there's been lots of other reports, but industrial land use, and land use in particular, of course, is reviewed. We review our living document called the planning scheme, and this is a contributor to our review of that sort of process. There's certainly been a large change in our district over the last 10 years, and this report now contributes to a document that Council has at its behest should we get further pressure on industrial land supply. And this report was actually, you may recall from the councillors who were here last term, was predicated by pressure we received from certain developers about Rosella and certain developers about other external land supplies that sought to remove from the industrial estate at Paget out to further cheaper areas of the region. This report now just gives us and our officers a further document to refer to when we have to deal with those requests from developers. And I don't think it's an issue to have a report like this in Council's arsenal when we are dealing with what could be now a start of a new regime of development in the area as we're seeing at the moment. So are there any other questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? We're moving that it be received. Councillor May moves, Councillor Englert seconds. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It's an enormous amount of work that's gone into the preparation of this report, and it's a very useful document for Council's future planning of industrial area. People may remember we've come out of a very large boom period back before 2012, 2013, and then we had a tapering off of demand on industrial land. And if we remember back to when this notified motion was put, that demand started to pick up. So it is very, very important that Council has a good understanding of what land is available and what types of uses that it can be used for, so that we are on the front foot, because we cannot afford as a region, as a city, a major city in the region, that we cannot afford to be left behind when it comes to industrial development. So we've got to make sure that we've got it earmarked and ready to go for when that demand is here. And there's no better way to realise that demand than by doing a comprehensive report like this from an independent body that now gives us a document to be able to use to make sure that we're ready to go when it comes to industrial land.
Thank you very much. Councillor May. Speaker against? Other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura speaking for.
Yes, Your Worship. Look, it does say, the report, very lengthy report, does talk about the amount of vacant land, 348 hectares in Paget, and a further 500 hectares at Rosella that could possibly be called on. And it was interesting to read the low and high growth scenarios, both in low impact and high impact areas, and you know, noted that before Paget was extinguished, in low growth it would not be required, Rosella would not be required in the entire period right till 2040. Paget South would be required in 2036, and the Rosella would start to be required from 2033 if we were to get a high growth. I found that interesting. The 157-page report was quite interesting, and if you do a bit of digging into it, some of the interesting examples were the total electricity generated by coal, this is around the world, has more than doubled since 1990. And about 38% of that generation comes from coal. The biggest loser in production in the world scale since 2000 is nuclear, down from 17% to 10%. It was also interesting to read that China, Japan and South Korea make up 70% of the thermal coal exports, or around 158 million tonnes in 2018-19. What effect will that thermal coal data have on Mackay's future demand for industrial land to support the mining industry? There's quite a few dot points. Some indicators are up and some are down. But the conclusion is that the impact on new industrial land in Mackay will partially depend on whether whether the global demand for thermal coal is sufficient to support the substantial expansion of coal mining activities in the Bowen and Galilee basins. I found that interesting. I also thought after that I'll look at what it says about sugar. And it was all in one page after multiple pages on everything else. It was summed up by saying there's a slowing demand and increased production capabilities in other countries will mean that the future demand for industrial land from the sugar industry is likely to be low. In relation to the beef industry, well, it only covered half a page of the 157-page report, and very same result as a low need for industrial land for anything to do with beef. So where does that leave us as a council? Basically, if industrial land is available too far in arrears of demand, then land prices will be uncompetitively high. If industrial land availability is too far in advance of demand, then serviced industrial land would be idle for an unacceptable period, representing overcommitment of the scarce capital resources that we have as council in building trunk infrastructure. The right balance is challenging to achieve. Future demand is uncertain and highly dependent on international markets. And it also states a minimum 5 to 7 year lead time is required to provide trunk infrastructure, which we all know. I believe we have the planning for our future industrial land about right. And look, I'm very happy to support the report.
Thanks, Councillor Bonaventura. Other speakers? Councillor Englert.
Thank you.
Speaking for.
Yes, thank you. From what I'm hearing from the Director and reading in the report, it's better to have this report than not to have it, and it seems as though Council made the right decision in asking for this report to be brought forward. Considering Councillor May's concerns about what might be missing from that report, I'm encouraged by the fact that one of the recommendations is to have a yearly review, and perhaps if there are holes in the data, there might be an appropriate time to bring that up each year. The point of that is that, as Councillor Bonaventura just said, it seems as though we're tracking well, but one of the main recommendations was this stuff gets away pretty quickly sometimes, and that's why they recommended to us to pay particular attention to it every year from now on, so we don't get caught out in future. So, yep, these reports cost money, but they're designed for us to stay ahead of the curve and save money for the ratepayers in the long term. It's an excellent report.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No other speakers? Well, councillors, I've never read a consultant's report that gets us 100% right. And obviously, probably this one doesn't get it 100% right, but it is good for our arsenal in terms of our forward planning. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Legislative delegates. Is that next?
Yes.
Right. 11.5.1 is the legislative delegations. This is pretty well standard at this time of the year to re-look at the delegations. So those delegation authorities for the Mayor's delegation, Council to the CEO and the Waterfront Priority Area, the PDA delegations. Are there any questions? We haven't received any questions on this. No questions? Pretty well straightforward. Is there anything you want to say, CEO?
No, just as part of the annual process that we do.
Righto, okay. So, would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Englert moves. Seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Englert?
I don't think anyone wanted to put their hand up because it's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we have 3 leases of land to actually deal with right now, councillors. 11.5.2 is the lease of land that's for Still Market, IMEO. This is going to remove telecommunications infrastructure from council's reservoirs, which is going to provide us with a fairly much safer environment to work in. It's an advantage to council to have this happen. Are there questions around this one? Councillor Bonaventura?
Just one, Your Worship. I note we're going to sort of give off 176 square metres or thereabouts of land to the leases, and we're offering 30 by 30 by 30 year lease for this. I just would like to check with the Director, are we convinced that we're not going to need any of that area in the next 90 years? Like, I know we've done upgrades to tanks and other areas, and I've gone up and seen machinery and that placed on every piece of dirt around the site, but just wanted to check if they've considered that.
Right, it's a good question. It's a 10 by 10 by 10 lease.
Oh, sorry, 30 years then.
It's a 30-year total lease, not 30 by 30 by 30. So we get a chance to review it at least
then,
at 10 years. You still want the question?
Yes, just want to ask the question if they looked at that option.
Direct that to Director of Corporate Services.
Where is she? Over there. Director of Corporate Services, right.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we have confirmed with the Water Department that it is a small parcel of land that they believe they will not require in the future whatsoever. So.
Right. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, further questions?
Yes,
Councillor May.
just in relation to the reduction in the amount of funds that it's raising for council, it's quite a significant reduction. I'm just wanting to understand why that is.
CEO, Director.
Thank you, Your Worship. We believe, because we're dealing with one leasee rather than separate leasees, we believe if we renegotiated those contracts now, we would get a lot less than we had in the past. So we believe it's around market value. So that's all we can achieve.
Okay.
Thank you.
No further questions on this one? So for the lease of land to still market, IMEO, would somebody like to move the officer's report be adopted? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor Mann? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Unanimously. The lease of land by the council to St John's Holding, and this is for Leisure Street at South Mackay for a period of 10 years. St John's been a long-term occupying that lease and shown a very good commitment to the land. Are there any questions? No questions. Somebody would like to move the adoption of the officer's recommendation here? Councillor Englert, Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor Englert.
Thank you, Worship. St John has been on that location for 10 years. They've done a really good job there. Without St John in this region, we'd be behest to finding additional costs for not-for-profits to provide first aid in the region. This organisation is all about helping people in need, and they support all of our other not-for-profits. So this is a really good outcome, not just for the council, but for the wider community, by giving them a home for the next 10 years.
Thanks, Councillor Englert. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. 11.5.4, again a lease to the Southern Suburbs Football Club. And once again, Souths have been a long-term occupier of the land and shown a long-term commitment to the land that's suggested for a 10-year extension for a 10-year period right now. So, questions? Somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Seymour. Councillor Mann.
As we've discussed, Southern Suburbs Football Club have occupied the land and have asked to do so again. And we are a rugby league mad town, I guess, and it makes sense in allowing them to do that, to play their home games, to develop their juniors, to develop their seniors, all sorts of things. So I think it's a really good recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Let's move on. Receipt of petitions. 12.1, a petition requesting works on Benson Road and Hay Point intersection. CEO, is there anything you need to say about this?
No.
Okay, questions? Fairly well straightforward. The recommendation is that this be received and referred to the CEO for a report back to Council. Would somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor May? I've put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Our tenders. Tender number 65 for 2020 at 13.1, Brownsea Court Park and the play equipment upgrade. This is quite substantial, of course. When we talk about play equipment, it's not cheap. Are there questions? Councillor Mann has a question.
I'm just concerned that it is over budget, and I guess this is the first time that we've received that information, so I'm wondering what's caused it to be over budget.
Okay, sorry, CEO.
Direct that to
Director.
Thank you, Worship. So there's a few factors that have led to the costs coming in more over what was originally estimated. So firstly, as a result of community consultation, the community requested the installation of safety fencing. So that was something that was then introduced to the scope. There was then other changes made to the scope to try and offset the cost of introducing some security fencing, but that did have an impact. There was a boundary adjustment undertaken with the adjacent road reserve, which was not anticipated at the start of the project, which had an impact on cost. And then the other, I think, major contributing factor to the why we got this wrong, I guess, is this project, when it was first being developed up, was at sort of the when the whole capital pipeline of projects, that whole process was still being established, and at that time, some of these projects, when the estimate was put together, there wasn't a full appreciation of the project management costs and some of the other overheads, and while they should have been and always should have been, they weren't necessarily included in those original estimates. So it's all of those factors combined that have led to the overrun. There was work done to try and look at the scope and see if those costs could be brought down, but at the end of the day, we still, to provide that appropriate level of playground provision to the community, this is the best we were able to do in terms of bringing those costs down.
Okay. Somebody else have a question? Other questions? Anything for you, CEO? No? Okay. Somebody like to move then the report's adoption? Councillor May moves. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This has been in the pipeline for a little while. We did do extensive consultation down there at Brownsley Court Park. I know that the community will be looking forward to this contract being let and the changes being made to the park and making it much more user-friendly for the community. So yeah, it's a good outcome.
Okay, thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. 14 on the agenda now. We have two notified motions to deal with today. Notified motion number 1 in terms of 14.1 is the request for increased councillor attendance reporting. It's a notified motion from Councillor May. Are there questions around this? No questions? Councillor Bonaventure, you've got a question.
Look, I'm quite an avid supporter of this notified motion, but as councillors we all need to be responsible for our actions. And look, at the September Council and Community Day, I did not participate in the last hour and a half. And I have no problem with this being recorded in the annual report, and this allows the public to judge if my attendance or lack thereof would meet the...
Is this a question, Councillor Bonaventure?
Can I, yes, Your Worship, it is. Can I ask how this will be recorded, where we do a partial attendance? Like I've missed the last hour and a half, I understand that. That would, you know, we've got 10 councillors, it would be quite a lengthy document, I would believe, but I'm keen to know how staff perceive that we could record that partial attendance at those events.
I don't know whether we've actually identified how we would record that yet,
No,
CEO.
we haven't, so we're waiting to see.
Waiting to see the outcome of this motion. The Expo, have you applied any thought process to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Probably no, except we will have to put some parameters around that to make it workable, I suppose. So, as the CEO mentioned, as long as Councillor is of a mind to look at this, we'll look at the details and bring that back. We may have some conversations before we bring it back formally.
Right, okay. Councillor Bella, question?
Look, I actually think this is a good thing. What I would like to ask, however, is there any consideration with a view to, should the councillor wish, to put reasoning to a non-attendance? There are certain legitimate reasons as to why a councillor can't attend certain things or a part thereof. The other thing is that a complete non-attendance is one thing. There's also non-attendance and then, as was the situation a few weeks ago, where you can cover the recording and the subject matter post the briefing. Is there an ability, or how is that going to be recorded?
Yeah, okay. So when the Expo brings this back, I mean, the recording of it and the explanation around some of the departures of or non-attendance, I think we need to deal with that when it comes back to council, if this gets passed today. All right. So, but I agree. I mean, it's going to be a little difficult, but it doesn't mean to say we shouldn't do it. Okay. So. Any other questions? Councillor May, you move?
Absolutely.
Councillor Mann seconds. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And the reasoning for this open and transparent reporting is that we are required for every Wednesday of the month to be doing something, an official day of council. And we currently haven't been able to capture whether councillors are attending the briefing sessions, whether they're attending the council and community days. So I think it's really important that we report that to our community, who is participating. And yes, there will be reasons why councillors can't attend, just like there is with council meetings, and I'm sure that the officers will be able to come up with a suitable way on how that's reported in the annual report. So I think in making sure that we are open, transparent and accountable to our community, I put this motion forward.
Okay. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Bella speaking for.
I am speaking for the motion, although I would caution that we don't simplify the job of councillors in the eye of the public, in that council is a lot more than just meetings, briefings and morning soirees. There's a lot of work that you can decide to do or not decide to do. and I'll bring a couple of things. You know, a lot of people don't realise the amount of work, not only to read an agenda, but to research in behind what is presented to you. For example, early in my term, last term, I drove from Waverley Creek to Townsville at my own expense, taking 2 days, interviewing well over 100 grey nomads to be able to put in valid input into our free camping debate. Earlier this year, I had a number of phone calls, having created a relationship previously through another organisation, but a number of phone calls with both the Deputy Prime Minister, Michael McCormack, and the Minister for Local Government, Mark Colton. Soon after, we received, and that conversation was the idea that councils should be considered first before other organisations in a number of areas, and one of these was in COVID recovery. We're in a perfect situation. Soon after we received, and I'm not saying it caused it, but $2 million in grants for our roads and community infrastructure program. Looking into the background of companies and organisations that are requesting grants and that to ensure that they are actually what they seem to be. And there was one situation towards the end of last year where it took a certain amount of time to look through both the Charities Register and the ASICs Register and expenditure of personal finance to actually find out that one company was not as they purported to be and did not meet our policy. So there's things such as that a responsible councillor does. These are not captured in the annual report, but I'm just taking this as an opportunity to let people know that these are the sort of things that we should, and some of us do. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Are there other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Your Worship. As councillors will recall, I have mentioned this in the past, that our community expects us to be open and transparent, and I have mentioned that I would love nothing more than to record the number of committee meetings that we attend, and my wish for that to be recorded also in the annual report. I am but only one vote after all. I do note that the example 1.1 on page 342 states that councillors at a minimum are to participate in council meetings, committee meetings and informal meetings and briefings. So why wouldn't we recall all of the meetings, not just ordinary meetings, briefing days and council and community days, as they only equate to approximately 9 days a month? When we attend, as Councillor Bella has stated, we attend to so many more things that our community expects of us, and as examples as above. However, in saying all of that, I am pleased to see that this is a start, and seeing this motion come before me today will certainly have my full support.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, any other speakers? You want to write a reply? Councillor May, exercising a right of reply.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Can I make it very clear that this motion is not put forward to be judging the responsibilities or the duties of a councillor. It is merely about reporting of attendance at briefing days and council and community days. Nothing more, nothing less. We have in the past looked at how we might be able to record all of the council participation in meetings and things, and the advice that I had from our officers at the time is that it is way too difficult to do that when you're recording the attendance of yourself, the Mayor, and 10 other councillors at those types of committee meetings, advisory committees. There's a whole range of things that we wanted to, if we wanted to go down that track. But I just wanted to capture that we have official days of council on a Wednesday, and I just wanted to capture the briefing days and the council and community days in line with our ordinary meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 14.2 is a notified motion requesting the re-establishment of public attendance at council meetings. Are there questions about this? You still want this to go forward? The councillors who want to put this up? Okay, are there questions?
Yes, I've got a question.
You got a question, Councillor May?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I just question how can a council make a resolution like this when community attendance in public spaces is really driven by the Chief Health Officer's directives? So if council makes a motion of council to be able to do what the councillors are asking here, and the Chief Health Officer's directives change, do we have to then go back and rescind this motion?
CEO or Exo?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I would have thought that given the legislation allows the chair to make that call, and I think they've done that on purpose to allow the flexibility pretty well meeting by meeting, so there's not a requirement then to go back to a council meeting to get a rescinding or otherwise of the motion. So the power rests with the chair of the committee, whether that's the council ordinary meeting or a committee meeting, and that can be made meeting by meeting. So I would have thought in simple terms any COVID rules overrule anything else, and the flexibility is there for the chair to make that call.
I'm not sure whether council understands that under the regs that were changed for COVID, 277 of the reg change, in terms of public access to particular meetings, and this is what the EXO is referring to, the chairperson of a meeting of a local government or committee of a local government is satisfied it is not practical for the public to attend the meeting because of health and safety reasons associated with COVID. Chairperson of the meeting may decide by notice published in the local government's website that the meeting be closed. So, I mean, that's in the regs, and that regulation extends until the 30th of June 2021. So this whole, to answer your question, this whole process of us as a council saying we want to adopt a motion that says the public be allowed back in, it is really overridden by the regulation requirement. And I'm afraid that the regulation requirement, as published by state law, trumps anything we move. Whilst the intent is absolutely fine for this motion, and we understand that, it's already been enacted after the change in the regulations Friday week ago. We made the inquiry of the Chief Health Officer about what constitutes the council in terms of its ability to meet in this building, and how many people could be put in under the COVID safe plan. So we put that in place, and that's the chair is able to do that. So that answers your question.
Yeah. I suppose just one question.
Yeah.
I put to the councillors that have put up the motion, would they now consider withdrawing that motion?
Councillor Bonaventura.
I worship this motion predates your words of coming out saying we will have public participation, and I believe once a motion's enacted we should simply go through the measures. And just in relation to Councillor May's question, the motion states that council recommences public participation at council meetings subject to applicable COVID safe practices. So should the health officer say, this can't happen, it's simply there in writing. So it's just a simple matter of proceeding to me with it as it stands, and therefore it's then on the record. There's no issue with it, I don't believe, so it's just a matter of having it recorded.
All right. Are there other questions? Who's moving this motion? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Bonaventura. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to highlight that this notified motion was sent to staff to be added to this agenda today on the 29th of September this year, which is just over 2 weeks ago. After members of the public were contacting Councillor Bella, Bonaventura and myself about when council will be able to allow public participation again now that restrictions are easing. I note on the 6th of November, just a week ago, it was pleasing to see that the Mayor take our lead and agreed with our notified motion and moved it along to allow public participation here today. And I personally would like to think that our proposal of this notified motion on the 29th of September played some small role in the Mayor's email sent a week or so later on the 6th of October. Thank you, Your Worship.
Speaker against. Councillor Englert speaking against.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's been clearly demonstrated that that the motion isn't required. I mean, we have public participation today. So for two reasons. One, it's already working without the notified motion. But secondly, you know, we've seen throughout this country politicians do very, very good things and very, very bad responses to this whole thing. And I don't believe that we as councillors should be determining on our own opinions what is safe to do and what is not. I believe we should be leaving that to the advice given under the legislation to the Mayor, and I think it's very dangerous for politicians and councillors in this place to be determining who comes and goes as they see fit over and above the advice that we are getting from people who are experts in that area. So, you know, as far as the notified motion goes, it's my opinion that it's not required because the system is working without the notified motion, and I don't believe councillors should be making these decisions. I believe that the experts come to us with the advice and we make those decisions based on that. I have no malice against it. Everyone wants to get public participation back in here. You know, we represent the democracy, but we're not representing it properly unless we have people in the room with us and those that are viewing from home. So the attempt is fine, but just the motion's not necessary. It's working as it is.
Speaker 4, Councillor Bella.
I really need to clarify a couple of points here. At no point were we making a decision with no regard for what the Chief Health Officer said. At no point. Initially, we asked for an investigation and were told that it was possible to fit 4 to 5 people in under the regulations. So we then went ahead on the 29th, which was before the decision was made by yourself, Mayor Williamson, that we'd like to have a look and an investigation into this. We were then notified that it was possible to do so. So it was altered slightly to say, and I draw attention and highlight, subject to applicable COVID-safe practices. There is no attempt to breach health regulations. And to be honest, to intimate that is kind of out there, you know, off the reservation, if you want to call it that. What was concerning to me was that, not that people didn't see our meetings, but there were a number of people that wanted to speak. And let's be serious, that is probably, you know, the pinnacle of democratic expression for a member of our region. So there was nothing in it. It was, if you look at the dates, an attempt to get some people, 1, 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5, back into the room so that they could express how they felt on certain issues. I will take this opportunity to actually appeal to media that if and when we get, you know, a full house on that 5, that we probably try and give priorities to people that do speak. Just a matter of courtesy, because I think it's very important. If you're only listening, it can be done on the live stream and whatever, but the ability to speak is, as I said, the pinnacle of our democratic system. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bella. Are there any other speakers? Councillor May speaking.
Sorry, Mayor. I put my hand up. I got a second chance.
Yes, you have. Yes, you can speak now.
I've just to clear to set the record straight. I didn't intimate anything, Mayor. I really, I'm just verbalising observed facts. We're doing it. We just spent up to $500 on this notified motion. It wasn't required, in my opinion. Regardless of the decision that you make as the chair of this under the current legislation, I believe you would be doing so with the advice of those that have the information that you don't have. So, as far as this motion overriding any of that, I wasn't intimating anything as such. It's observed fact. It's happening right now. It is what it is.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor May, speaking against, rather.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I too want to state, I fully support public participation in council meetings, have done since I've held a chair in this council office, and will continue to support that. What I don't support in this motion is that it is not necessary. It is not necessary to have a motion on the council's books because we are already doing it, and I've got with me the recovery plan here. So when we get to stage 5 on the 1st of November, are we going to bring another motion that allows us to have more people in the room? It is just quite silly, really, to think we have a system in place The Chief Health Officer sends down the directions, the state government publishes the recovery process and what we can and can't do under those directives, and the Mayor enacts it. It's pretty simple. By all means, I fully support public participation, but this motion is not necessary.
Speaker 4. Councillor Bonaventura.
Oh, just to clarify, Councillor England, just in relation to making the decisions, regardless of this motion, once it's successful, you still have the ability prior to any meeting to say, due to a health risk, I will close the meeting to the public. And you can do that at any time. So it's not that we're trying to curtail any of the powers of council. It was simply to bring it forward into the public attention, and which I believe we have now done. So regardless of where it goes, we have done that.
Thank you, Councillor Bonaventura. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor May.
Sorry, just one other point that I would like to make is that during this whole COVID process and the arrangements that we have with council meetings, the community have been able to correspond with the council and have their issues raised here by yourself, the Mayor, or the CEO in writing to the council. So we have tried to facilitate that public participation via a different means to be able to satisfy the COVID restrictions. So I just really wanted to make that point, that we have enacted that as part of this process, and then obviously the live streaming and the live book gives people the opportunity to view firsthand what is happening in the council meeting.
Thanks, Councillor May. Are there any other speakers?
Just quickly, Your Worship,
yep.
and in that period from when COVID started, and I will ask the CEO or staff, have we had any letters come in from the public that have been read out at a council meeting?
Not to my knowledge, no. But the offer was always there.
Yeah, and
as we published. Okay, there are no other speakers. So, councillors, can I just address a couple of issues? This room has a COVID-safe plan on it. We are able to fit 5 extra people in now, as per the new COVID-safe plan. And in terms of prioritising anybody that wants to speak to council, we can fit another 20 out there, and we can hot desk them in if that's the case. There's no reason to actually enshrine it. We will do it as part of the COVID-safe planning. So if people turn up wanting to actually participate, the COVID-safe plan now, this new one for this room, allows us to put 5 people in here. If there's another 10 outside, we will just hot desk them in, and the officers will do that. There's no need to enshrine it. I'm still perplexed over this particular motion that council recommences public participation at council meetings when there is a part of the regs now that will make it immaterial whether we have this meeting, the motion passed at this meeting. Because if we go back into shutdown next week, it's on my desk to actually have to deliver the decision. But then I've got a council recommendation that says we recommence public participation. Even though it says, subject to applicable COVID safe practices, we don't want to have the debate every time that is it applicable. The enactment under 277E of the regs now clearly trumps anything that we do here with this motion. And nobody is about to exercise any, particularly me, not exercising any authority without reference to the Chief Health Officer's department, which is what we did. So I just think it's superfluous. I love the intent, and I commend you for that, but it's a superfluous motion to have on council. So with those few words, do you want to exercise a right of reply? Councillor Jones, you moved it.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to end by, end by saying that it is our right to put up a notified motion and as such have it voted on, so that's where I'd like to leave it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is lost. Thank you. Let's move on. We have 3 confidential reports. Oh, sorry. Public participation. I'm sorry.
well.
Oh, right, okay. I missed that page, I'm sorry. So we do have public participation, and so Mr. Ruffle, thank you very much for being here today. I hope you understand the public participation rules. This is not an interaction with council. You're allowed 3 minutes to deliver, your address to council, and at the end of 3 minutes, I have 3 options under the council's bylaws for meeting procedure to either refer it or assign you an officer to take care of what you're presenting to us today. So your 3 minutes starts now. Thank you very much for being here.
Yes, concerning the problem at Anthony's Crossing, Sandy Creek on Kinchin Dam Road. Now, Mr. Williamson, shortly after you were elected mayor, you came out and looked at the problem. You got down on the creek bed and agreed with us all. All we had to do was straighten the 4 box culverts, which affect the flow of the water, straighten the eastern side bank of the creek, and fit another 3 to 4 box culverts. With the straightening of the creek, eastern bank, which means we will only have to remove 12 trees. Now, Karen May, do you recall this? Because you were there. In 2011, we did a petition with approximately 200 names on it. Since then, another 18 houses have been built, which means another 50 to 60 people living on the western side of the crossing. In December 2016, the Regional Council sent me plans and quotes for this crossing. The cheapest was 1.4 million, doing exactly what we need. The greatest concern to people on the Kinchin Dam Road is if there is an emergency in the wet season. This crossing can be over anything from 2 to 12 days, caused by release of water from the Kinchin Dam to bring the dam back to the holding level. Plus you still have the general runoff from the catchment.
Okay, so thanks very much, Mr. Ruffle. I'll refer that to the CEO, and the CEO will be in touch with you to give you an update as to where we are now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, and so the other registration is from the Daily Mercury. Thank you. All right, late business, councillors. No late business. Right. Okay. We have 3 confidential reports to consider, and perhaps we do need to go into a closed session of council to consider these reports. Unless there's somebody who thinks we don't. I think we probably should discuss these reports. So would somebody like to move that the council be closed to the public? Councillor Englert moves, Councillor Jones seconds. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. We'll close this session to the public to consider 3 confidential reports. on. Okay, we have resumed our public interaction. The confidential reports to consider, 3 of them, 17.1, the draft minutes of the Makai Events and Conference Attraction Program, the 4th of September meeting and the 14th of September meeting. Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Englert moves, Councillor Townsend seconds. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. 17.2, the 2020-2023 Queensland Cricket Partnership. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves, Councillor Townsend seconds. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. 17.3 is expressions of interest, the EOI for the Mackay waterfront development opportunities for MRC 21001. That's our EOI. Would somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor May moves, Councillor Green seconds. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, CEO and directors, for your attendance today. I declare the meeting closed.